The morning sky over Serenity Prime turned red with fire and death. Captain Hyan ran through the smoking ruins of what had once been the most beautiful city in the galaxy. Behind him, the screams of his people filled the air as giant warships dropped bombs from the clouds above. The Villani had never known war. For thousands of years they had lived in peace on their green world. They built hospitals instead of weapons. They studied how to heal wounds, not how to make them. Their children grew up learning songs about friendship with other worlds, not stories about battles and death. But peace meant nothing to the Korthak Empire. Hyan stumbled over broken stones as another explosion shook the ground. His long silver hair was covered in dust and his gentle blue eyes showed fear he had never felt before. The Villani were tall and thin, with skin like pale moonlight. They moved like dancers and spoke in soft voices. They were everything the Korthak were not. The Korthak were born for war. Their thick gray skin could stop bullets. Their red eyes burned with hate. They had sharp teeth and claws that could tear metal. They lived to fight and kill and take what others had built. For 200 years they had moved across the galaxy like a plague, destroying every peaceful world they found. Captain. The voice belonged to Nari, a young scientist who had been working in the healing centers when the attack began. She ran toward him, carrying a small child in her arms. Behind her came Tae, an engineer whose hands shook as he held a broken communication device. "How many ships do they have?" Hyan asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "More than 300, Tae said, his voice barely a whisper. "They surround our entire world. Our defense satellites lasted only minutes before they destroyed them all." Hyan closed his eyes for a moment. The Villani had 12 small patrol ships that were used for exploration and rescue missions. They had no weapons, no shields, no armor. Against 300 Korthak warships, they might as well have been made of paper. "Sir, what do we do?" Nari asked. The child in her arms was crying softly, too scared to make loud sounds. Hyan looked around at his dying world. Fires burned everywhere he could see. The beautiful crystal towers that had reached toward the stars for centuries now lay in broken pieces. The gardens where children played were now filled with smoke and bodies. "We run," he said finally. "We save who we can and we run." They made their way through the burning streets to the spaceport. Most of the landing platforms had been destroyed, but Hyan's research ship, the Harmony, still sat on its pad. The ship was small and fast, built for long journeys to study distant stars. It had no weapons, but it had something more important. Right now, it could fly faster than most Korthak ships. They gathered survivors as they went. An old teacher named Doc carried medical supplies. A young mother named Saul held twin babies. A teenage boy named Rim helped carry wounded people who could not walk. In total, they found 37 Villani still alive in the ruins. The Harmony was built to carry 20 people comfortably. With 37 on board, there was barely room to breathe. But they had no choice. Every minute they stayed on Serenity, Prime was another minute closer to death. As Hyan started the ship's engines, Korthak fighters screamed overhead, hunting for any Villani still trying to escape. Through the ship's windows, he could see the massive Korthak command ship hanging in the sky like a metal mountain. Its guns fired constantly, turning hospitals and schools into burning craters. "Why are they doing this?" Sewell asked, holding her baby's clothes. "We never hurt anyone. We only tried to help others." "Because they can," Hyan said sadly. "Because we are weak and they are strong. And that is all the reason they need." The Harmony lifted off just as Korthak ground troops reached the spaceport. Hyan pushed the engines as hard as he dared, racing toward the edge of space. Behind them, the planet that had been their home for thousands of years grew smaller and smaller until it looked like just another red star. But they were not safe yet. 3 Korthak fighters spotted them and gave chase. Their ships were faster and had better weapons. Hyan knew they would catch the Harmony soon. "Tae," he called to the engineer. "Can you make our engines go any faster?" "I am trying, sir, but they are already at maximum power," Tae replied, his fingers flying over the control panels. The Korthak ships got closer. Hyan could see their weapons charging for the kill shot. In a few seconds, it would all be over. The last free Villani in the galaxy would die, and their species would be just another name on the Korthak list of extinct races. Then something strange happened. The largest Korthak fighter suddenly exploded. The other two ships stopped chasing the Harmony and turned to face a new threat. But there was nothing there, just empty space. "What happened?" Nari asked. Before Hyan could answer, two more Korthak ships exploded. Still, they could see nothing attacking them. It was as if invisible ghosts were destroying the enemy fighters. "Resistance ships," Tay said with wonder in his voice. "There are still some of our people fighting back." But Hyan knew better. The Villani had no invisible ships, no weapons that could destroy Korthak fighters. This was something else, someone else. The attacks gave them the time they needed to escape. The Harmony jumped into hyperspace just as more Korthak ships arrived to investigate the mysterious explosions. For 3 days they flew through the darkness between stars. The Harmony was not built for so many passengers, and food and water ran low quickly. The wounded needed medicine they did not have. The children cried for parents who would never hold them again. On the 4th day, Hyan made a decision that would change everything. "I am going to send a message," he announced to the other survivors. "To who?" Nari asked. "The Galactic Council will not help us. They are too afraid of the Korthak." "Not to the Council," Hyan said. "I have been studying star charts of unknown regions. There is a sector the galaxy calls the Death Zone. The Council says it is too dangerous to explore, but recent scans show signs of intelligent life there." "The Death Zone?" Doc, the old teacher, shook his head. "That area of space kills everything that enters it. That is why they call it the Death Zone." "Maybe," Hyan said. "Or maybe that is just what the life forms there want others to think." He began recording a simple message. His voice was tired and sad, but he spoke clearly so that any species that received it would understand. "This is Captain Hyan of the Villani people. We are dying. Our children cry for mercy. Our world burns. We have no weapons to fight back. We have no armies to protect us. Please, anyone who receives this, we seek peace, not war. Help us." He sent the message toward the Death Zone and waited. For hours there was no response. Then, finally, a signal came back. It was short and simple. In a language the ship's computer could barely translate. "Message received. Help is coming." Hyan stared at the words on his screen. Somewhere in the Death Zone someone had heard their cry for help. But who were they? And what kind of help were they sending? He did not know that 47 light-years away, the most dangerous species in the galaxy was preparing for war. Communications Officer Bin sat at his station on Luna Base, Earth's main listening post on the moon. The night shift was usually quiet, filled with routine scans of nearby space and checks for asteroid threats. But tonight was different. Tonight, something came from the darkness that made his blood run cold. The alien signal was weak, traveling across 47 light-years of empty space. The computer needed several minutes to clean up the transmission and translate the strange language. When Bin finally heard the message, he sat in shocked silence. "We are dying. Our children cry for mercy. Help us." Bin had heard many signals from space during his 5 years at Luna Base. Most were from Earth's own ships or colonies. Some were radio waves from distant stars. But this was the first time he had ever heard aliens begging for their lives. He called his supervisor immediately. Within an hour, the message was on its way to Earth Defense Command. Within 2 hours, it was sitting on the desk of Admiral Wu, the head of Earth's military forces. Admiral Wu was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in 3 wars and commanded ships that had traveled to the edge of known space. Nothing surprised her anymore. But as she listened to the alien message for the 3rd time, she felt something she had not felt in years. Anger. "How far away are they?" she asked General Doe, her chief of staff. 47 light-years, ma'am," Doe replied. He was a big man, with scars on his hands from his days as a Marine. deep in what the star charts call the Korthak Empire territory. The Korthak, Wu said slowly. Tell me what we know about them. Intelligence Director Yu stepped forward. He was young for his position, but his mind was sharp as a knife. The Korthak have been expanding their empire for over 200 years. They destroy any species they find and take their worlds. The WoW Galactic Council considers them the greatest threat to peace in this part of the galaxy. Why has no one stopped them? Wu asked. Because no one can, Yu replied. Their military is too strong. The Council species are mostly peaceful. They have small defense forces, but nothing that could challenge the Korthak directly. Admiral Wu walked to the window of her office and looked out at Earth below. The blue and green world looked peaceful from space, but she knew better. Humanity had fought wars for thousands of years. They had learned to survive on a planet that tried to kill them with storms, earthquakes, diseases, and predators. They had built weapons that could destroy mountains and ships that could travel between stars. What do you recommend? She asked. Her staff. General Du spoke first. It is not our fight, Admiral. These aliens are 47 light-years away. Even if we wanted to help, it would take weeks to get there. And the Korthak Empire has over 1,000 ships, Yu added. We would be flying into a war we cannot win. Admiral Wu turned back to face them. How many ships do we have ready for deep space missions? 47 combat vessels, Du replied, plus support ships for supplies and repairs. 47 ships against 1,000, Wu said quietly. Those are not good odds. No, ma'am, Du agreed, which is why we should not go. Admiral Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then she pressed a button on her desk. Get me Captain Han, Captain Lee, and Captain Park. I want them here in 1 hour. Admiral, Yu said carefully. You are not seriously thinking about responding to this signal? I am thinking about a lot of things, Wu replied, but mostly I am thinking about children crying for mercy while their world burns. 1 hour later, 3 of Earth's best ship captains stood in Admiral Wu's office. Captain Han commanded the flagship Indomitable, the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Captain Lee was in charge of Shadow Strike, a stealth destroyer that could appear and disappear like a ghost. Captain Park led the massive carrier Iron Storm, which carried over 100 fighter craft. You have all heard the alien message, Admiral Wu began. I want to know if we can help them. Captain Han was the first to speak. He was a calm man who thought carefully before making decisions. The distance is not a problem. Our ships can make the journey in 18 days. But the enemy numbers are overwhelming. Overwhelming for a normal fleet, Captain Lee said with a smile. She was known for taking impossible risks and somehow surviving them. But we are not a normal fleet. We have advantages the Korthak do not know about. Such as? Admiral Wu asked. Stealth technology they have never seen, Lee replied. Weapons, designed to fight in Earth's deadly environment, and tactics developed through centuries of warfare on a death world. Captain Park nodded slowly. He was an older man who had fought pirates and raiders across human space. The Korthak are used to fighting peaceful species with small defense forces. They have never faced an enemy that fights back with real skill and determination. So you think we can win? Du asked. I think we can make them pay a price they never expected, Han replied. The question is whether we should. Admiral Wu looked at each of them. The aliens are not asking us to conquer their enemies or take their territory. They are asking us to save their children. If we do nothing, an entire species dies. And if we do something, we might start a war that spreads across the galaxy, Yu warned. The war has already started, Wu said firmly. The Korthak started it 200 years ago. The only question is whether humanity will finally end it. She made her decision. I am ordering Task Force Retribution to deploy immediately. Captain, Han, you will command the mission. Captain Lee, your stealth ships will scout ahead and gather intelligence. Captain Park, your fighters will provide support for ground operations. Ground operations? Du asked. Colonel Kim and his Devil Dogs Marines are already preparing for deployment, Wu replied. If there are aliens still alive on that planet, we are going to save them. Over the next 6 hours, Earth's military machine moved into action. Ships that had been in dock for repairs were quickly finished and made ready for combat. Weapons that had been tested but never used in real battle were loaded onto fighters and destroyers. Marines who had trained for years in Earth's harshest environments prepared for their first real alien war. Colonel Kim was a legend among Earth's ground forces. He was tall and strong, with eyes that could see danger from miles away. His devil, Dog's Marines were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. They had trained in Earth's deserts, jungles, mountains, and frozen wastelands. They could fight in any environment and against any enemy. "How many Korthak ground troops should we expect?" Kim asked Major Choi, his second-in-command. "Intelligence says maybe 50,000 on the planet's surface," Choi replied. She was smaller than Kim, but twice as fast, and her special operations unit had never failed a mission. They used them to hunt down survivors after the bombing stops. 50,000 against 800 Marines, Kim said with a grin. Almost fair odds. Meanwhile, in the intelligence section, Commander Bay worked frantically to gather information about their enemy. The Korthak Empire had been expanding for centuries, but they had never fought a species from the Death Zone. No one knew what their ships could do or how they would react to Earth's technology. "What do we know about their tactics?" Admiral Wu asked during the final briefing. "They prefer overwhelming force," Bay replied. "They surround a planet with hundreds of ships and bomb it until nothing moves. Then they send ground troops to finish off any survivors. It is effective against peaceful species, but it has one weakness, which is, they have never fought an enemy that could hurt them back," Bay said. "Their commanders are not used to adapting when their plans fail." Admiral Wu nodded. "Then we will make sure their plans fail." As Task Force Retribution prepared to depart, news of the mission spread through Earth's colonies. Some people supported the rescue mission, saying humanity had a duty to help other species. Others opposed it, fearing it would bring the Korthak Empire's attention to Earth. But Admiral Wu had made her choice. 47 human warships would travel across the galaxy to answer an alien cry for help. They carried the hopes of a peaceful species and the fury of a world that had never learned to surrender. In the depths of space, the Villani survivors waited and hoped. They did not know what kind of help was coming from the Death Zone. They could not imagine that an entire fleet of warships was racing toward their dying world, and 47 light-years away, the Korthak Empire continued its slaughter, unaware that humanity had just declared war on everything they represented. The Deathworlders were coming. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Serenity system, like sharks emerging from dark water. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and stared at the scene before him through the main viewing screen. What he saw made his jaw clench with anger. Serenity, Prime hung in space like a wounded animal. The once green world was now brown and gray, covered in smoke from burning cities. Around the planet, over 200 Korthak warships moved in a slow circle, taking turns to bomb the surface below. They were not trying to capture anything useful. They were simply killing everything that lived. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy readings from the planet," reported Lieutenant Jun from the sensor station. "The Korthak ships are using weapons designed to burn away the atmosphere itself." "How long until the planet is completely dead?" Han asked. "At their current rate, maybe 6 hours," Jun replied quietly. 6 hours. Han looked at his small fleet of 47 ships facing an enemy force 4 times larger. The smart thing to do would be to retreat and call for help. But the Villani did not have time for smart decisions. "Open a channel to all ships," Han ordered. "This is Captain Han to all vessels. You know what we came here to do. Behind us is Earth and everything we care about. In front of us are the people who turn children into ash for fun. I will not ask you to be heroes today. I will only ask you to be human." He switched to a channel aimed at the Korthak fleet. "Korthak ships, this is Captain Han of the Earth Defense Fleet. You will stop your attack on the planet immediately and withdraw from this system." The response came quickly. A harsh voice filled with hate and amusement spoke in broken galactic, standard language. "Earth ships? We have never heard of Earth. You will leave now, or we will add your bones to our trophy rooms." I am Admiral Vector of the Korthak Empire. The voice continued. We have destroyed 1,000 worlds and killed 1 billion beings. Your little fleet does not scare us. Run home to your mothers, little Earth children, before we teach you what real war looks like. Captain Han was quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was calm and cold. Admiral Vector, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing. Your ships, if you do not, we will destroy you. The alien laughter that came through the communication system sounded like metal scraping against stone. 30 seconds? You give us 30 seconds, we will give you 10 seconds to run before we burn your ships and take your skulls. Han looked at the countdown timer on his screen. 20 seconds left. 15. 10. 5. Time's up, he said quietly. All ships engage the enemy. Show them what Earth sends when children cry for help. The battle began with fire and death. Captain Lee's stealth destroyer Shadow Strike had been hiding in the shadow of a dead moon, invisible to Korthak sensors. At Han's signal, she launched 20 missiles at the enemy command ship. The Korthak never saw them coming. The huge warship exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. Target down, Lee reported calmly. Moving to secondary targets. The Korthak fleet reacted like a kicked anthill. Ships that had been calmly bombing the planet suddenly spun around to face this new threat. Admiral Vector's second-in-command, a Korthak named Grixcon, screamed orders through the communication system. All ships attack formation, destroy these Earth insects. But the humans were not where the Korthak expected them to be. Captain Park's carrier Ironstorm launched over 100 fighter craft that came at the enemy from 6 different directions. The small, fast ships moved like angry wasps, striking at weak points in the Korthak formation. This is Commander. Bay to all fighters, came the voice of the intelligence officer who was now leading a squadron of attack craft. Target their weapon systems first. Dead ships tell no tales. The Korthak had superior numbers, but they were used to fighting enemies who ran away or died quickly. They had never faced pilots who flew straight into enemy fire while laughing, with excitement. Human fighters danced between the massive alien warships, shooting at engines and weapon ports with deadly accuracy. On the Indomitable, Captain Han watched the battle develop while giving orders to his crew. Target the big one on our left. Full power to forward weapons. The flagship's main gun spoke with the voice of thunder. Beams of pure energy crossed space in seconds and tore through the armor of a Korthak heavy cruiser. The alien ship broke in half and spun away into the darkness. But the humans were still outnumbered, and the Korthak were learning quickly. They began to group their ships together and focus their fire on individual human vessels. The destroyer Braveheart took a direct hit and exploded. The cruiser Stormrider lost power and drifted helplessly. Sir, we are losing ships, reported Lieutenant Jun. The enemy is adapting to our tactics. Then we adapt faster, Han replied. He opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. All ships pattern Delta 7. Hit them fast and get out. Do not try to trade shots with ships 10 times your size. On the planet below, the real war was just beginning. Colonel Kim's Devil Dogs Marines had launched from their transport ships in small drop pods that screamed through the atmosphere like falling stars. The Korthak ground forces had been busy hunting Villani survivors in the ruins of cities. They were not ready for 800 human soldiers, who came from the sky with murder in their hearts. This is Colonel Kim to all units, the Marine commander said over the radio as his pod slammed into the ground in the middle of what had once been Serenity Prime's capital city. Remember, we are here to save people, not to look good doing it. Kill anything with gray skin and red eyes. Protect anything that does not try to kill you first. The Korthak ground troops were bigger and stronger than humans, but they had never fought soldiers who had grown up on a world that tried to kill them every day. Human Marines moved through the burning city like ghosts, using the smoke and ruins to hide from enemy sensors. Major Choi led her special operations team toward a massive Korthak base that had been built on top of a Villani hospital. Through her helmet scanner, she could see heat signatures that looked like prisoners being held in the lower levels. Reaper team, this is Choi, she said to her soldiers. 47 enemy troops between us and the prisoners. Standard rescue pattern. Fast, quiet, and absolutely brutal. The human special forces moved like death itself. They came out of the smoke and shadows, killed the Korthak guards before they could call for help, and disappeared again. Within 20 minutes, they had freed over 200 Vellani civilians who had been waiting to die. Lieutenant Jun, who had left his sensor station to lead a squad of Marines, found himself face to face with a Korthak warrior in the ruins of a school. The alien was twice his size and covered in armor that could stop bullets. It carried a weapon that could punch holes through tank armor. But Jun had been born on Earth where the storms could kill you, and the animals hunted humans for sport. He moved faster than the Korthak expected, rolled under its weapon, and put 3 shots into the weak spot where its armor joined at the neck. The alien fell like a cut tree. "This is easier than fighting the bears back home," Jun said to his squad. Sergeant An had the job of protecting a group of Vellani refugees that included children too young to walk. The Korthak had sent 50 soldiers to kill them all. An had 12 Marines and a lot of creative ideas about how to use the broken buildings around them. "They want to hunt children?" An said to his squad as they prepared their ambush. "Let's show them what happens when the children's guardians hunt back." The battle raged for hours. In space, the human fleet continued to dance around the larger Korthak force, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. On the ground, human Marines fought building by building to save every Vellani they could find. But the tide began to turn when Captain Lee's stealth ship managed to get close enough to the main Korthak command vessel to launch a boarding party. Major Choi's Reapers cut through the alien ship's hull like it was made of paper and began fighting their way toward the bridge. "This is Choi to all units," the Major reported as her team moved through the Korthak ship's corridors. "We are inside their command ship. Repeat, we have Marines on their flagship." The Korthak crew had never dealt with human soldiers inside their own ship. They were used to space battles where enemies stayed at a distance. Now they faced fighters who moved through their ship like it was their own home, using every corner and doorway as a weapon. Admiral Vector himself tried to stop the human assault. The Korthak leader was huge even by his species standards, with scars covering his body from 100 battles. He carried weapons that could cut through metal and wore armor that had never been broken. He found Major Choi in the ship's main corridor and challenged her to single combat, confident that his size and strength would be enough to crush the small human female. He was wrong. Choi had grown up in the mountains of Earth, where the air was thin and the cold could freeze blood in your veins. She had learned to fight from teachers who had survived wars that would have broken entire alien civilizations. When the Korthak admiral came at her with all his strength, she was ready. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, Admiral Vector lay dead on the floor of his own ship, and Major Choi was broadcasting his surrender to the entire Korthak fleet. "This is Major Choi of Earth Defense Forces." The silence that followed the Korthak retreat was broken only by the crackling of fires on the planet below. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the last enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Around Serenity Prime, the wreckage of over 100 Korthak warships drifted like metallic snow. "Damage report," Han ordered. 7 ships lost, 12 more damaged but repairable, Lieutenant Jun replied from his station. "Enemy losses are approximately 130 vessels destroyed, 40 captured intact. It should have been impossible." A fleet of 47 human ships had destroyed an enemy force 4 times larger. But Earth's military had learned something the Korthak never had, that in war, the side that wants to win more usually does. On the planet's surface, Colonel Kim's Marines were busy with the hardest part of their mission, finding survivors. The Korthak had been bombing Serenity Prime for days before the humans arrived. Entire cities had been turned to ash. Mountains had been melted flat. Oceans boiled with poison. "Sir, we have found another group," reported Sergeant An over the radio. 53 Vellani hiding in underground tunnels beneath the old museum. They have been down there for 6 days with no food. "Good work, Sergeant," Kim replied. "Medical teams are on the way." The colonel stood in what had once been the center of Serenity Prime's capital city. Now it was a wasteland of broken buildings and twisted metal. The beautiful crystal towers that had reached toward the stars were gone. The gardens where children had played were now craters filled with poisoned water. But the Vellani were alive, thousands of them, hidden in basements and caves and underground shelters. They came out slowly, blinking in the sunlight, unable to believe that the nightmare was finally over. Dr. Sue, a human medic, worked beside Nari, the Villani scientist who had escaped with Captain Hyon. Together they treated wounded civilians in a field hospital set up in the ruins of a school. "Your people are very gentle," Sue said as she watched Nari use her healing abilities to help an injured child. "I have never seen medical techniques like yours." "We have had thousands of years to perfect the art of healing," Nari replied sadly. "We never thought we would need to perfect the art of surviving war." The Villani healing technology was unlike anything humans had ever seen. They could fix broken bones in minutes and heal cuts that would normally leave scars. But even their advanced medicine could not fix the damage that had been done to their hearts. Captain Hyon stood among the ruins of his people's greatest library, where millions of books and data files had been stored. Everything was gone now, burned to ash by Korthak weapons. Thousands of years of Villani history and knowledge had died in a single day. "I am sorry we arrived too late to save more," Captain Han said, walking up beside the alien captain. "You saved our children," Hyon replied quietly. "Without you, there would be no Villani left at all. We will never forget this debt." But even as the rescue operations continued, troubling news was coming from other parts of the galaxy. Commander Bay had been monitoring Korthak military communications, and what he heard made his blood run cold. "Sir, you need to hear this," Bay said, calling Captain Han to the communication center. The intercepted message was from Warlord Grixtar, the supreme leader of the Korthak Empire. His voice was filled with rage as he spoke to his generals. "Admiral Vector is dead. Over 100 of our ships have been destroyed by an unknown species from the Death Zone. This cannot be allowed to stand. I want every available ship sent to hunt down these Earth creatures and destroy their homeworld." "Sir," one of the Korthak generals replied, "we do not know where their homeworld is located." "Then find it," Grixtar roared. "Send scout ships to every system in the Death Zone. Search every planet. When you find Earth, burn it until nothing lives. And bring me the heads of their leaders so I can display them in my throne room." Captain Han listened to the message with growing concern. The battle at Serenity Prime had been a victory, but it had also painted a target on Earth itself. The Korthak would not rest until they had their revenge. "How long until they can reach Earth?" Han asked. "At least 2 weeks," Bay replied. "But sir, they have over 500 ships available for an attack. Even with our defenses, Earth cannot survive that kind of assault." Han was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Send a message to Admiral Wu," he ordered. "Tell her we are not coming home yet. We have more work to do." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Wu was dealing with problems of her own. News of the battle at Serenity Prime had reached the Galactic Council, and they were not happy. Ambassador Zethral of the Concilium Federation appeared on Wu's communication screen. The alien diplomat's 4 eyes showed fear and anger in equal measure. "Admiral Wu," Zethral began, "the Council has learned of your attack on Korthak forces. This is a violation of galactic law. The Earth government must recall its ships immediately and apologize for this unprovoked aggression." "Unprovoked?" Wu replied coldly. "We responded to a distress call from a dying species. Is saving innocent lives now against galactic law?" "The Korthak Empire is a recognized government," Zethral said nervously. "Their internal affairs are not the concern of outside species. Your actions could start a war that spreads across the entire galaxy." Admiral Wu stood up from her desk and looked directly at the alien ambassador. "Ambassador, the war started 200 years ago when the Korthak began their campaign of genocide. The only question is whether the galaxy will finally fight back or continue to hide while children are murdered." "The Council cannot support Earth in a war against the Korthak Empire," Zethral said. "We do not have the military strength to face them directly." "Then get out of our way," Wu replied and cut the communication. She turned to General Doe, who had been watching the conversation with interest. "What do you think, General?" "I think the Council will surrender the moment the Korthak demand it," Doe said. "They are too afraid to fight, and too weak to win if they tried. Then we fight alone," Wu said simply. Back at Serenity Prime, the human fleet was preparing for the next phase of the war. Captain Lee's stealth ships had been busy gathering intelligence from captured Korthak computers. What they found was a map of horror that stretched across hundreds of star systems. "Sir, look at this," Lieutenant Kang said, showing the data to Captain Han. "The Korthak have attack fleets at 17 different worlds right now. All of them are peaceful species with no military capabilities." Han studied the star map, seeing the locations of ongoing genocide scattered across the galaxy. Each red dot represented millions of innocent beings who were dying while the Galactic Council debated and did nothing. "How many people are we talking about?" he asked. "Conservative estimate? 2 billion civilians," Kang replied. "And that is just in the current active war zones. The Korthak have probably killed over 50 billion beings in the last century alone." Captain Han was quiet for a long moment. Then, he called together all the ship commanders for an emergency meeting. "We came here to save one species," he said to the assembled captains on the main communication screen. "But now we know there are dozens of others facing the same fate. The question is, do we go home and let them die, or do we finish what we started?" Captain Lee was the first to respond. "Sir, our orders were to rescue the Villani and return to Earth. We have done that." "Our orders were to respond to a distress call," Han corrected. "I am still receiving distress calls. Are you saying we should ignore them?" Captain Park nodded slowly. "The captain is right. We cannot save one species and abandon all the others. That would make us no better than the Council. But we are only 40 ships," pointed out Captain Kim of the destroyer Thunderstrike. "The Korthak have hundreds of fleets scattered across the galaxy. We cannot fight them all." "We do not have to fight them all," Han replied. "We just have to make them too afraid to continue their genocide." Over the next several hours, the human commanders developed a plan that was either brilliant or insane. They would split their forces into small groups and attack Korthak fleets across the galaxy. Instead of trying to hold territory, they would strike fast and disappear, making the enemy afraid to venture far from their main bases. "It is a good plan," said Major Choi, who had been promoted after her capture of the Korthak flagship. "But we will need more than 40 ships to make it work." "Then we build more ships," and Han said simply. He opened a communication channel to Earth. "Admiral Wu, this is Captain Han. I need to speak with you about expanding our mission." The conversation that followed would be remembered as the moment when humanity decided to become the galaxy's protector, whether the galaxy wanted protection or not. "Sir," Lieutenant Jun said quietly as the meeting ended, "do you really think we can win a war against an empire that has been conquering worlds for 2 centuries? Captain Han looked out at the ruins of Serenity Prime, where human marines were still pulling Villani children from the wreckage. "Lieutenant," he said, "we are not trying to win a war. We are trying to end one. And sometimes the only way to end a war is to become so dangerous that your enemies stop fighting." In the depths of space, Korthak scout ships began their search for the mysterious world called Earth. They had no idea that Earth was already searching for them. 6 months later, Communications Officer Bin sat at his station on Luna Base, monitoring signals from across the galaxy. The quiet night shifts were a thing of the past. Now, every hour brought new messages from species asking for Earth's help. Some begged for rescue from Korthak attacks. Others offered alliance against the crumbling empire. A few demanded that humanity stop interfering in galactic affairs. Bin smiled as he processed another message, this one from the Crystalline Collective, thanking Earth for liberating their homeworld from Korthak occupation. It was the 47th HFY liberation message he had received this week. The war had changed everything. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now flagship of the 3rd Liberation Fleet. Around him, the crew worked with the calm efficiency of soldiers who had seen too much combat. They were no longer the same people who had left Earth 6 months ago. They were harder now, scarred by battles across a dozen star systems. "Sir, we are receiving a distress signal from the Mordai homeworld," reported Lieutenant Jun from his station. "Korthak siege fleet, approximately 80 ships." "How many civilians?" Han asked. "Estimated population of 50 million, Jun replied. "All aquatic species, no military capabilities." Han nodded. It was the same story they had heard, dozens of times. Peaceful species, no defenses, facing extinction at the hands of Korthak war fleets. But now there was a difference. Now someone was coming to help. "Signal Captain Park's task force," Han ordered. "Tell her to take her ships and handle the situation. Standard liberation protocol." "Yes, sir," Jun said, sending the message. Liberation protocol had become routine for the human fleet. Strike fast, hit the enemy command ships first, rescue as many civilians as possible, then disappear before Korthak reinforcements could arrive. It was working better than anyone had expected. The Korthak Empire was collapsing. Warlord Grixtar sat in his throne room on the Korthak homeworld, staring at reports of another defeat. His latest war fleet had been destroyed by human ships at the Lithoran Crystal World. Over 100 Korthak vessels lost, along with their entire invasion force. "How many fleets have we lost this month?" he asked his aide, a nervous Korthak, named Vexmon. 17, my lord," Vexmon replied, trying not to show his fear. "The humans strike without warning and disappear before our reinforcements can respond. Our commanders are afraid to leave port." "Afraid?" Grixtar roared, his massive claws scraping against the metal arms of his throne. "Korthak do not know fear. We are the conquerors of 1,000 worlds." "Yes, my lord," Vexmon said quickly. "But the humans, they fight differently than anyone we have faced before. They do not try to hold territory or build empires. They simply kill our ships and disappear." Grixtar was quiet for a long moment. In 6 months, the Earth fleets had destroyed over 3,000 Korthak ships and liberated 47 worlds. Worse, their tactics were being copied by other species. The Galactic Council had formed its own defense fleets, using human weapons and training. "What about our search for their homeworld?" Grixtar asked. "We have found nothing, my lord," Vexmon admitted. "The death zone is vast, and our scout ships keep disappearing. We suspect the humans have hidden defense systems throughout the region." What Vexmon did not know was that the scout ships were not being destroyed by defense systems. They were being captured by Captain Lee's stealth fleets, their crews interrogated, and their ships added to Earth's growing navy. On Earth, Admiral Wu stood in the command center that had become the center of galactic military operations. Screens around the room showed the positions of human fleets across hundreds of star systems. What had started as a rescue mission for one species had become a war to reshape the galaxy. "Status report," she ordered. General Doe stepped forward with the latest intelligence briefing. "The Korthak have lost over 60% of their active fleet. Their remaining forces are pulling back to defend their core worlds. Several subject species have declared independence and joined our alliance." "Any sign of Grixtar's main fleet?" Wu asked. "Still massing at the Korthak homeworld," Doe replied. "Latest estimates put it at over 400 ships. If he decides to make a final push toward Earth, it could be their last chance to win the war." Admiral Wu nodded. She had been expecting this. The Korthak would not surrender easily. Eventually, they would gather every ship they had left and try to destroy Earth before the human fleets could stop them. "Are our defenses ready?" she asked. "Home fleet is at full strength," Doe replied. 200 ships plus orbital defense platforms and planetary shields. If they come, we will be ready." But Wu knew that the real victory would not come from defending Earth. It would come from ending the Korthak Empire forever. On Serenity Prime, the rebuilding had begun. The Vellani worked alongside human engineers to construct new cities from the ruins of the old ones. Captain Hyon supervised the construction of a memorial to the billions who had died in the Korthak Wars. "It is beautiful," said Nari, the Vellani scientist who now served as liaison between her people and the human fleet. "But I wonder if we will ever be able to forgive ourselves for not fighting back sooner." "You are healers, not warriors," replied Dr. Su, the human medic who had decided to stay on Serenity Prime to help with the reconstruction. "There is no shame in being what you were born to be. But there is shame in letting evil triumph while we do nothing," Hyon said quietly. "Your people understood something we never learned. Sometimes peace must be defended with war." The Vellani had offered their healing technology to humanity as payment for their liberation, but Admiral Wu had refused to accept payment for saving innocent lives. Instead, she had proposed a different arrangement, a permanent alliance between species committed to protecting peace in the galaxy. The Alliance of Free Worlds now included over 60 species, all united by their determination to prevent another Korthak empire from rising. Human fleets provided military protection, while member species contributed their unique technologies and resources. But the war was not over yet. Colonel Kim led his Marines through the corridors of a captured Korthak base on the frontier world of Nexus 7. The facility had been used as a training center for Korthak shock troops, soldiers bred specifically for genocide operations. "Sir, you need to see this," called Sergeant An from across the room. She was standing in front of a massive computer terminal displaying star charts. Kim walked over and studied the screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The charts showed the locations of over 300 cleansing operations planned for the next year. Each one represented the complete extinction of another species. They were not just conquering worlds, Kim said slowly. They were planning to kill everything that was not Korthak. "Sir," An said quietly, "according to this data, they have already killed over 100 billion beings in the last 2 centuries. Kim stared at the numbers on the screen. 100 billion. More people than had ever lived on Earth, murdered by a species that saw genocide as a form of entertainment. "Send this data to Admiral Wu immediately," he ordered. "The galaxy needs to know what we are really fighting against." When the data reached Earth, it sparked outrage across the Alliance. Species that had been neutral in the conflict suddenly volunteered their fleets for combat operations. The Galactic Council, which had spent months trying to negotiate peace with the Korthak, finally declared them an enemy of all civilized life. But the most important reaction came from humanity itself. Admiral Wu called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. Presidents, generals, and fleet commanders gathered to discuss the future of the war. "We now know that the Korthak Empire is not just another aggressive species," Wu began. "They are a threat to all life in the galaxy. The question is, what do we do about it?" "We end them," said General Du simply. "We hunt down every Korthak ship and destroy them before they can kill anyone else. That would make us no better than they are," protested President Chen of the Pacific Federation. "We cannot commit genocide to prevent genocide." "We are not talking about genocide," Wu replied. "We are talking about justice. The Korthak leadership has committed crimes that cannot be forgiven, but their people, many of them were born into this system. They can be changed." The debate that followed would determine the final phase of the war. In the end, humanity chose a middle path: total defeat of the Korthak military, but mercy for those who surrendered and renounced their empire's ways. 3 weeks later, warlord Grixtar made his final gamble. 400 Korthak ships, everything the empire had left, jumped into the Sol system in a desperate attempt to destroy Earth before the human fleets could stop them. They found Admiral Wu waiting for them with 500 human ships and allies from 30 different species. The battle lasted 8 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Korthak fleet. Grixtar himself died when his flagship exploded, taking the last hope of the Empire with him. The war was over. In the months that followed, the remaining Korthak worlds surrendered one by one. Some accepted alliance membership and began the long process of changing their society. Others chose isolation, promising to never again venture beyond their own star systems. Communications Officer Bin, now promoted to Director of Galactic Communications, processed the final message of the war.